Welcome back, everybody, to the Renaissance Stewardism podcast. In today's episode, I will be discussing Saudi Arabia and what it could potentially do during the Hamas-Israel war, which began on the October the 7th. This is being recorded on the 21st of October. Just in case there's been any changes and updates, this episode should be coming out this coming Monday, by the time you actually watch this episode. Okay. Over the next few months, we will determine who has the real decision-making power in Saudi Arabia. Is it Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, or MBS for short, who was born in 1985 and is part of the millennial generation born between 1981 to 1996? His generation age group will be a critical factor in the decision-making of the Saudi Crown Prince, from a generation that doesn't give a damn about the Palestinians and Hamas or the liberation of the Holy Land from the Jews. They see them as unimportant to the national interests of Saudi Arabia and another group backed by Iran, even though previously Saudi Arabia created OPEC in the 1970s, as well as the oil crisis, to try to punish Israel and Western nations, particularly uh, in Europe and the United States, who supported Israel. MBS is from a different generation with vastly different priorities and objectives than his father. MBS' father, King of Saudi Arabia since 23rd of January 2015, Salman, aged 79, inherited the throne after his half-brother, Ad Hodad, died of ponemia at age 90. I do apologise if I've butchered his name. He was born in 1935, but most of the decision-making power and day-to-day operations of running the country is done by Crown Prince MBS. Uh, Both men are from different generations and different attitudes towards Israel and the Palestinians. It could very well be this conflict that decide who is actually the real power in Saudi Arabia. Is it the King of Saudi Arabia or the Crown Prince? And potentially, over the next few months, we'll finally find out who actually rules in Saudi Arabia, and also potentially the King of Saudi Arabia could have a mysterious death as well. It is very possible, especially with royalty. There's a big possibility that MBS could bump off his father, or his father could remove his son from the actual position of crown prince or limit his power because he's not really running the nation day to day. The best way to think of him is like the CEO who doesn't run the day to day operations, who likes to go golfing, kind of like Donald Trump. And the crown prince is actually the manager who does the day to day decision making. So that's the big what we'll find out over the next few months who's the real power in Saudi Arabia. The importance of generational differences cannot be overstated. An excellent example of this is UK Prime Minister in late 2000s when he was opposition leader with the Labour Party winning government at the time. David Cameron called people that use Twitter twats. He apologised for that statement in 2009, but the reason why he made that statement was because he's from a different generation to millennials, and because he started his political life in the late 1980s and 1990s. That's where he got his opinions about the world, opinions about globalization, opinions about democracy, opinions about liberty, and why he intervened or tried to intervene in Syria and intervened in Libya during the Arab Spring in the early 2010s. That's how his worldview was formed in the first 10 years of his working life. And that's how it works for most people, because particularly politicians and leaders, they don't have the opportunity to read, to educate themselves, to understand more sophisticated technology. That's why a lot of our current generation of politicians are inept, because they got their political views, they learned about politics, they learned about the world in the 1990s or early 2000s, and now we live in a very different world. And it takes some time for a new generation of politicians, a generation of leadership to actually come to power. And this is the issue between the Crown Prince and the King. They're both from different generations, both with different views on politics, different views on security in the Middle East, and what's best from Saudi Arabia. That because they're both from different periods. The King of Saudi Arabia most likely got his political opinions and his views back in the 50s and 60s. For MBS is in his late 30s. He was born in 1985. He's a millennial. Uh, his views, his ideology were formed in the past 2 decades at least, and that's why there will be conflict between those two, and why it will all be coming to a head during the next few months. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you find information useful and precise. And I'd like to say thank you to all my new subscribers. It's much appreciated your support. And if anybody will listen to this, please don't forget to either ring the bell, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you all for listening, and peace out.